so fun. So I'm super excited. I will be putting timestamps for the different questions, so you can follow along that way. So there's a lot of questions, so let's get into it. I have my phone to read the questions off because I can't memorize them. Okay, so question number 1. Best book you've read so far in 2022? So, I don't think I've talked about this book yet on my channel, but I'm excited to talk about it in an upcoming book review video. Maybe I did, I don't know, I can't remember. But anyways, the best book I've read so far this year is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. This book got me out of a reading slump, number 1. Number 2, I can't stop thinking about it. I read it probably a month ago, maybe more, and it pops in my head all the time. When I finished this book, I was like, not messed up, but I was like heartbroken that it was over. It made me cry. It was so good, and long story short, it is about a family, a very dysfunctional family. Trigger warning, spousal abuse. So, yeah. Anyways, this book is about a family in the 70s who moves to Alaska, remote, like bush, Alaska. And, so they're living like off the grid basically, and her dad got back from Vietnam, and, you know, as most people that come back from war are messed up. But it's just a story about how they went from living, I think, in Seattle to, and this is fiction, by the way, how they went to live in remote Alaska, and it's one of the most beautiful stories I've ever read. Kristen Hanna is a brilliant author, and the way she describes things is just unreal, and I loved the main character. And you kind of read through the book as she grows up, and it's just, it's such a good book. I can't recommend this book enough. So this was absolutely the best book I've read so far this year, and it will have a permanent spot on my bookshelf. Okay, next. Some people did this and some people didn't, but I decided to add it in because I thought it would be fun, and why not add more? The worst book that you read of 2022. So I don't think the official book tag list includes this category, but I wanted to include it. I've talked about how much I did my disdain for this book. This is Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman, and there was a lot of hype around this book, especially on TikTok. And I just could not. One, I found out that the author, after I already decided I didn't like it, I found out that the author essentially plagiarized or I don't know if it's plagiarizing per se, but basically took a story that happened in real life and wrote a fictional novel about it and didn't give credit to the person. So that just didn't sit well with me, but I didn't like the book anyways. It had a bunch of unnecessary, like, random articles and stuff in it. And then what I didn't like about it is that it was written like fan fiction, and I personally do not like fan fiction. I think some of it's kind of weird and cringy. That's my personal opinion. I don't have issues with people that read or write fan fiction. It's just when people talk about like celebrities in a certain way where it's very like over the top obsessed, it weirds me out. So I just didn't think it was well written. It wasn't impressive. I think the trope of like the very hot celebrity getting with like the ugly nobody is kind of burnt out. It's kind of like revitalizing like an early 2000s movie, rom-com movie into a book. So I just wasn't impressed. So this was the worst book I read so far this year. Okay, next is the best sequel you've read so far in 2022. this one I almost didn't finish, but I had some bones to pick with it. So it's the sequel of the Crescent City series, and there's only 2 out now, but they're pretty big. By Sarah J. Maas, classic fantasy fiction writer, and this was The House of Sky and Breath, and I loved the first one. It's a really wonderful fantasy fiction that is set in a world where there's all these different types of mythical creatures living together. It's adult. There is spice, so warning on that. But it has a lot of modern stuff in it, so I think that's called like anachronisms. I don't know how to pronounce that word, anachronisms. But basically when you take things that are like modern and put them in a different time period, although technically this is a different world and no time periods apply, but you know, I think a lot of times fantasy fiction is like set in kind of like an old age time period, you know what I mean? So anyways, they have like cell phones and stuff. So it's very modern, and the language is modern. But anyways, the ending of this book blew me away, and I'm not going to talk about the spoiler or anything, but when I was reading through this, some of the dialogue's really cheesy, and I think this year especially, I've kind of come to a point where I'm like fed up with like cheesy, romancy, like dialogue, or like just very common tropes. And you get a lot of that with Sarah J. Maas and Jennifer Armentrout, and you know, they have their place in the book world, but it just gets a little tired. So anyways, I was reading through this book and I was like, oh my god, like, I don't know if I can keep doing this, if I can keep reading this, because it's so massive. But anyways, I'm glad I stuck with it, because not only is the story actually very good and all of the climaxes and stuff, but the ending was just unreal. So, best sequel I read this year. Okay, next is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. This just came out on Tuesday, I think, or I got it on Tuesday, but it came out like in the last week. This is the daughter of Dr. Moreau. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name. I think this is maybe like part of the universe of H.G. Wells originally, but I'm not sure. But anyways, Sylvia Moreno Garcia wrote this book, and I love her writing. She has one of my favorite books on my shelf, which is Gods of Jade and Shadow, and I just loved that book. She also wrote Mexican Gothic, which I liked. I didn't love, but I liked it. But anyways, I really like her books, so I am excited to read this one. It just came out. She typically writes books, fantasy fiction books, set in like between 1900 1950 Mexico. So it's a really cool, unique setting, and I just really am drawn to it. I just think it's so cool. So I'm very excited to read this one. But yeah, I think Dr. Moreau, I don't know, is a character in an H.G. Wells book, I think. I'm pretty sure. So anyways, I don't know if you have to read that book. And H.G. Wells is a famous sci-fi writer. But anyways, I think this is going to be her first book kind of delving more into sci-fi, so I'm super excited about that. So she I should say, specializes in writing like fantastical horror. So very excited about that. Okay, next is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I do not have this book, obviously, because it's not released, but it's gonna, of course, have to be the next Inspector Gamache book, which will be book number 18 in the Inspector Gamache series by Louise Penny. If you're new here, the Inspector Gamache series by Louise Penny, starting with book number 1, Still Life, is my favorite series of all time. It's mystery, just pure mystery, set in Canada, and it's like a cozy mystery, and I'm obsessed with it. So, the next one comes out in November, and it's called A World of Curiosities, and I'm very excited to read that one. So, that is that one. Biggest biggest disappointment. I have two for this one, so number one, I was hesitant to say this one, but it's The War of Two Queens by Jennifer Armentrout. I love this series. This is the Blood and Ash series. This is book number 4. They're pretty big. It was fine. Once again, I think I'm just kind of over the same trope, and my biggest bone to pick with this book in particular, and kind of just as the series has grown, is the main character's obsession with each other, and the way they talk about each other is just so over the top and so corny and so obsessive, creepy, and just like nobody is like that, you know? And like, I get that it's a romance, I understand, but I'm more so here for the world that this takes place in, because it's a fantasy fiction series, and it takes place in a really cool world with all kinds of mythical creatures and stuff. So once again, this is adult, it is spicy, so if that's not for you, don't read it. There are a lot of spicy scenes. But anyways, I'll still read the series because I do like it. I'm just disappointed in the fact that Jennifer is like focused so heavily on their romance when the world that she's building is just so unique and interesting, and I feel like that should be the main focus. But I know she's a romance writer, so I can't really knock her for that, but that's just my opinion. And it wasn't like a massive disappointment. I wasn't really disappointed by a lot of books. This one I was disappointed by. Not that I had high expectations. This is To Paradise by Hanya. I never know how to say your last name. Not Yana Gihara. I'm so sorry. I DNF'd this one at, let's see, how many pages are in? Almost 200. If you're not familiar with this author, which I won't butcher her name again, she wrote A Little Life, which is one of the most like messed up books ever written, but it has a lot of praise. I also DNF'd that book. Not for me, and it's not because I thought it was like too, like I couldn't handle it. I'm not a fan of her writing. I don't like her writing. I heard about this one and it was different enough that I was like, I'll give it a shot. I could not. The characters were so boring. There's 3 stories like mixed into one in this novel. It's also very big. And I just could not care. I couldn't be made to care. Also, I'm going to say something that is controversial, and I hope that this isn't taken the wrong way, but her books focus only on gay men, and it comes across a little bit like she's fetishizing them. Now, I could be completely wrong, and please do not come for me. That's just my opinion and my observation. I just think it's odd that that's all she writes about, and she's a woman, which I'm not saying women can't write about gay men. It's just that every character in all of her books is gay, and it's a man. No lesbians that I know of, but to be fair, I did DNF both of her books. I think I DNF'd, did not finish, A Little Life like halfway through or something. Apparently right before like one of the most messed up scenes happens. I looked up how the plot of that book, by the way, and all the spoilers, and yeah, unnecessarily dark. I understand that life can be dark, but I don't know. I think something, how do I say this? I'm just not a fan of this, so I probably won't ever try to read anything by her ever again because I've DNF'd both her books, so. Yeah, I just not impressed. So anyways, that's my opinion on that. Next, on to happier things. The biggest surprise. So this book was sitting on my shelf for so long. I can't even tell you how long I've had this book. And I specifically didn't read it because of the cover. It was just, I'm very much an aesthetic person. And I'm drawn to things that are pretty. You can't blame me. And so I just was like, whatever. Also, it's a series of short stories. So, and that's not usually my cup of tea. So I just, for those reasons, I was like, not interested. I've never been more wrong in my entire life. This is one of the best books I've ever read and completely flipped my mind about short stories, and I immediately purchased the other book by this author, Danielle Evans. This book is a series of short stories, a fiction, but could absolutely very much be real or based on true events. It mostly has to do with race and being black in America. And it's just riveting because as a white woman, there are certain things that I can have, maybe should I say sympathy for, but I can't have true empathy because I could never understand what being subjected to some of those experiences is truly like. But this book gave me the closest taste that I could possibly get to understanding a very probably widespread experience, especially in America. Each story was a punch to the gut. I've said that probably multiple times, but it rings so true. It's just, she is such a good author. There's something about the way that she writes that is so intelligent but so real, and I just like, I can't say enough good things about this book. I hope everybody reads it. It's so good, and I have her other book and I haven't read it yet. I've just been reading other things, but I can't wait to read that one, so highly recommend that. Okay, next is newest fictional crush. So I haven't talked about this book yet because I just finished this book. It was literally the last book I finished. It took me almost 3 weeks to read. And it is Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. There is a lot of reviews, not a lot, but a chunk of reviews about this book that feel like it's misogynist. I didn't really get that vibe. However, I can understand how some people would feel that way. I thought it was just an extremely horrific, graphic vampire story. It's like a mix of Castlevania and The Witcher. That's the vibe that it has. But the main guy, there's something about dark, edgy guys that are emotionally unavailable that I'm just always going to be attracted to. So, it's so good. I don't want to talk about it too much because I'd like to actually dive into the review more in detail, but the main character, Gabriel, is a very dark, edgy man, and he's fine. I haven't really had a true book rush since Reese from A Court of Thorns and Roses series. That was one of the ones that I was in love with a fictional character, but he came close. He was annoying at times, so he doesn't fully have my heart, but I loved him. Okay, next, newest favorite author. So this is a tie for me between Danielle Evans, who wrote The Office of Historical Corrections, and Kristen Hanna, who wrote The Great Alone, because they were both new authors to me this year. And I think this is asking my new favorite author, not just a new author. I'm gonna read it that way. New favorite author for me. It's a tie between both of them because very different, I think. However, there's something about the way that the rawness that both of them write that I just adore them, and I will absolutely read anything that they write. It was that good, so I'd have to say that's my answer for that. Newest favorite character. I didn't have an answer for this one. That's tough. I read a lot of non-fiction. Who would be my newest favorite character? Oh, I have an answer for this actually. I read The Guncle, which I don't think I pulled it out. I didn't. But was on like a sitcom or something like that. It's fiction. Who his friend passes away, his best friend, and she has 2 kids, and they end up going to live with him for the summer because the dad's not doing too well emotionally. So they go to live with this Patrick, the gay uncle Patrick, and it was such a good book. It made me laugh, it made me cry, it was so good, and his character was just so good. The character development over the course of the story was phenomenal. Okay, next is book that made you cry. I mean, I would say there's a lot of books that made me cry. What should I put? Oh yeah. I think this book made me like sob the hardest though this year. When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. So Dr. Kalanithi was a neurosurgeon who passed away from cancer, and every time I think about this book, it hurts my heart. This is such a good book because it talks about the perspective of life from a doctor, especially someone who operates on brains. The book is unfinished technically, but his wife finishes it because he did pass away before he was done writing it. But oh my god, did I cry? It's beautiful though, it's not just sad. It's uplifting and beautiful, and it reminds you of how precious life is. And I read it at a time where I needed that message, so but I did bawl my eyes out when he passed away. So good. And I think that I said that was nonfiction. It is a true story. Next is a book that made you happy. Funny Farm. My Unexpected Life with 600 Rescue Animals by Lori Zaleski. This is another nonfiction one, and it's about a woman who inherits this farm and ends up taking care of all of these like messed up animals, like disabled animals, sick animals, and that is now what she does for a living. And the stories are just so heartwarming and so funny, and there's some dark moments in the book, but this book gave me hope in the world again because I'm extremely passionate about animals. Any animal video, happy or sad, I cry at. I'm so soft when it comes to animals, that's why I have so many. And it's just so nice to think that there is somebody out there that has an entire beautiful, like, free range land for all of these, like, rejected, disabled, sick, broken animals, and that just gives me hope for the world. And it's just genuinely such a sweet, heartwarming, and hilarious book. So I highly recommend this if you need to pick me up. Okay, favorite book to movie adaptation you've seen so far this year? This one was tough to answer. I didn't actually see any, except I did see Dune. I did not finish Dune. I could not finish Dune. I'm not smart enough to finish Dune. But I watched the movie and I really liked the movie, so I have no idea if it is, like, accurate to the book. But I really liked Dune, and I really liked Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya. I would be legit panicked if I was in a room with both of them. But yeah, I loved that. I thought that was a really good movie, and I will continue to watch those movies because I can't read the books. Next is favorite review you've written this year. I don't write reviews. Very rarely do I write reviews. I probably write like one a year, and it's like a sentence. So, instead, I would say that if I were to write a review, it would be for this, because this was a very unassuming book for me. Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. This is a book that I thought about for a long time after finishing it. And it has a very Cloud Atlas feel, regardless of the name, which I know is similar. But just in the way that it's told, and it jumps between like years ago to future. And it connects them all. And usually I don't care about, it's hard for me to care about characters if there's multiple character stories in the same book for me to focus on. But I cared about every single character in this book. They are written so well. And it was a beautiful blend of fiction, sci-fi, I don't think really fantasy. It was fantastical, but fiction. But it just blew me away. I did not expect to feel that way about it, honestly. So I really, really, really liked this book. And I think if I were to write a review, that's what I would have said about it. But I don't write reviews. If you follow me on Goodreads, you'll see that I just rate them. I rate every book I read, but I never write a review. Okay, next, I think is the most beautiful book you've bought this year? Yeah. Most beautiful book you've bought this year. This thing is heavy. I bought this in January in a little shop in Brooklyn, New York, because of how beautiful it is, and also because I love tarot. It's one of the few spiritual things I do on the daily. And it's a beautiful artwork book, a tarot artwork book, and it's a Taschen book, so you know it's gonna be good. It was not cheap. It was like $50 or something. I did a full flip through of this book on my channel if you're interested in watching that, where you can see the beautiful artwork within. But this is just an absolutely gorgeous book. The Library of Esoterica. Okay, and I think the last one is what books do you really need to read by the end of this year? I don't think there's really more than one, but I have this one, which is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, who wrote The Great Alone, which was the first book I talked about, so I just realized I started with her and ended with her. Love that. That's great. But anyways, this book I haven't read yet, but I imagine I'll like it. But it's gonna be a movie come, I think, early 2023, so I do need to read this by the end of the year so that I can actually watch the movie. And I don't think it'll be hard for me to read it because, I was so obsessed with The Great Alone that I imagine I will make time to read this book. But this is like her most popular book, which is why it's being made into a movie. So I'm eager. The story, like the premise, doesn't actually sound that interesting to me. Like The Great Alone was about like the wilderness in Alaska, and that was up my alley. But this is about World War II, and I just cannot really get into World War II stuff. But the reviews are raving, so, and I love her, so I'm gonna go into it with optimism. But yeah, that is the mid-year book Freakout tag. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. It was fun to make when I was putting my list together. It was fun to kind of like reminisce about the favorite books I've read so far this year, because I've read some good ones this year. And there's only been a few times I've really been disappointed. But yeah, thanks so much for being here with me.